Welcome to a show within a show. And after 45 minutes of technical difficulties, from getting a camera to work to cutting out delay, we're here to give you a show. And if it's going to be good, I don't know yet because, I'm here with Casper. We've had a few
Uh,
words, a few
we've
chats,
had
a
a
few
we've had a
tones.
word. We've gone off on tangents, haven't we?
Isn't that the fun part about life, though? Is life is full of different types of tangents.
Life is full of tangents, and I've been checking out some of your podcasts where you've been asking people about, how do you define yourself and how do you do these things, and that's so I sat back and I was going, how would I define myself? I mean, and then I realized that we kind of live in a society of labels, and why do we need to define ourselves at all in a way, kind of thing?
Because it
Because
makes it
it's
easier if you can
Well, yeah,
classify
but it makes
something.
it but the thing about classifications is if you think about it, all the labels that we have as people are given to us. They're not our choice. We're given a name when we're born. When you're married, if you're a woman, you would take on your husband's name. When you go to school, your teacher will call you by your last name or whatever. Occasionally, someone will maybe legally change their name, but that's kind of on them, kind of thing. But so if you look back on, you go, why do I actually need a label, and why do I need you to define what I am, kind of thing? And then you had a very interesting conversation. I can't remember the gentleman's name, where you were talking about, I hope he didn't go down the route of, oh, my job defines me, or my kids define me, or something like that. And I was thinking, why do we need
You're talking about Josh
other
Hyman.
yeah, then I was thinking, why do we need other things to kind of define what we are? Because if you I suppose they could be accomplishments, like, and I was going down this road, I was going, because so you asked a really interesting question, and I was going, where do you go with this? And I'm thinking, okay, if I was going to define myself, what do I do? Like, do I have, you could do it by accomplishments, but everyone's definition of success or wealth or accomplishment is different. So what you think is your definition of yourself, other people might look at you and go, "Wow, what a loser." And so but it doesn't matter what other people think. But we live in a society where it does, where other people's opinions of you are shaping us all the time, whether we know it or not. It's kind of crazy.
You
So
know what? I think it started way back in the day with like you want to talk about like caveman era. I think there was just like one dude that was like, "Oh, maybe we should classify things to be able to understand more." And then that's what it started with. It became this thing of you would find labels, you would try and get details of things to better understand a situation. Then eventually it just turned into this downtrodden, watered down version now where people want to classify themselves as something because they want to feel unique and
yeah,
they want to feel special, which is a problem I have with like what parents used to do back in the day. They always put so of this unique potential and like weight on their kids'
well, do you,
shoulders.
do you remember? Have you ever? You're a boy, and all your shit is blue. Because like, and you're a girl and all your stuff is pink. They paint your room, they do this stuff, they give you, and so and you're expected to be, as a boy, you're expected to go into sports, and as a girl, you're expected to be a ballerina or whatever and stuff. And it's, when you go back to all those ways, when you're talking about labels and stuff, labels, that's where we get religion. That's where we get us up, because people are trying to label. They're going, okay, this big orange globe thing is rises from the sky. What is that? We need to, we need to label it so we can pin it down, so we can kind of go, okay, I understand it now because I put a name to it. And you kind of go, maybe not, because back, so, and you're like, even if you put a name to it, you go, well, that's the god Ra. We'll just, yeah, okay, good. Ta-da. I know what it is. I understand it. I can deal with it. That's just Ra doing his thing in the sky. Or, uh, you know,
Is it bad if my brain, when you said boy, blue room for a boy and pink room for a girl, my brain immediately went, what happened about all the kids that had their room painted with lead paint back in the day? Like, my brain just goes down that rabbit hole, like
what
before people knew
happened?
that was bad.
What happened to all the kids who have to spend their first 2 years in a pink room and they're a boy, and their parents just don't want to be bothered changing the room, kind of thing. And you go, well, why is my room pink and all my other friends' rooms are blue, kind of thing. It's, when we talk about identities and, definitions, and it's, yeah, I went down many rabbit holes when you asked those questions. It was really, really cool. Like that's a fantastic question to ask. And I think so. I was thinking, what defines me? And then I was getting down to, I kind of like stories. And I go, well, what's a story? And then stories are, I think stories define everybody. Like we each have our own story, but stories can be told with pictures, words, sounds, smells.
Yeah, but you got to
So
be
they,
that's very sketchy territory because if you're gonna identify yourself as a storyteller, you better have some fucking stories that are gonna pack a wallop. Because I've talked to some people that are like I'm known as a storyteller. I'm like, you haven't told me one goddamn story.
the
I
thing
haven't
about
heard of
that,
Bigfoot
I
in the
think that
woods.
the thing about that though is you get into things like somebody they take a picture and they go, yeah, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but sometimes one word is worth 1,000 pictures. That's all you got to say. You use a word, say like just say the word Holocaust to someone. That could, that could open up a whole load of stuff. Or it might mean nothing to someone who, say, like there's a millennial who doesn't, who's never heard of it because they're not really, it's outside of their purview, their realm of
Who
stuff.
hasn't
Like,
heard of the Holocaust?
be surprised, man. You'd be surprised. But there's lots of stuff. It's sort of like when we were getting into, I'm learning Japanese now for various reasons, kind of thing.
I think I'm
But
turning Japanese. I think I can't say that. Hold on. That YouTube will flag that. I won't finish that one.
that's the vapor. Just say the Vapors, one of my favorite bands of the '80s. I
Is
I
that who
love
sings it? I just remember it from
they're
like a
no
movie. It
no
was
they're
Jackass. That's what it was. They were running
yeah,
around
it's
Tokyo.
a band called the Vapors, and it's a fantastic song. It was one of my favorite songs, but it's
All right, so hold on a second. The
what
Vapors. Now, if you
the
just
Vapors.
change one of those letters, you would have a major problem on your hands.
I know. Well, that's the other thing about, well, vaping and or vapors, or I'm trying to see there. It depends on what letter you change because you could be the Vaders, you know. So maybe you're a bunch of
That's not where I
Stormtroopers.
was going with it. I was
Exactly.
changing that V to an R, and then you get a little bit more of like a priest vibe to you.
Yeah, exactly. See, these are all stories. These are all. But where I was going with this was in Japanese have this um an alphabet system or a word system called kanji, which is a picture represents a word. And even that word has a bunch of definitions to it. And there's something like, like 80,000 of them. And you think about it and you go, how do you how do you learn a language like that? But then I started thinking about the English language. And there are words that people use every day with just our alphabet that I have no idea what they mean
And they're
because I'm not.
constantly changing 24/7.
Well, they're not just the words are changing, like the meanings are changing, but there are words that people use that I've never heard before. And I think about it and I go, I'm over 50. I would think I'd heard quite a few words, but the average person uses around 200 words a day for our everyday conversations. And
Really?
there's, yeah, yeah,
Is that
because,
200 throughout the whole entire day? Because that would make more sense because people don't really talk anymore.
well, that's what they don't really talk, but I mean, using words, that's like texting and typing and stuff like
Okay.
that. They're still using words, and, but they might not actually be speaking in
Fucking
words, but
Twitter limits you to 200 characters.
well, but even then, you think about that and you go, the concept of Twitter is really cool because they're like, no, no, take your thought, strip it down, and I call it the Einstein explanation or whatever. Einstein was said once, if you can't explain your theory to a 4-year-old, you don't understand it. You need to break it down into parts that even the you know the most basic learners can understand your principle, because if you can't, you don't actually get it, because if you can't.
I'm gonna spin you a little story, okay? And I'm not a storyteller. You ready? It just happened to
You
me.
lost. Yes, you are. But anyway, go ahead.
I talk to people and I get a story maybe, but I don't have my own.
Yeah.
So 3 days ago, I had I'll tweet a joke on Twitter. It's usually what I use my Twitter for, but my Twitter does not reflect what my podcast is about. I can be very serious on my podcast or I can be lighthearted. I choose to like to be humorous, especially when you're learning something because you can soak up information easier that way, or at least I find that I can. Um, but I had tweeted something and like you can tweet like I remember crafting out a whole joke and then I got to like the last part of the joke, like the last few words, and it was like out of room. And I was like, all right, I'm not gonna fucking do the branch like the where someone tweets and they
Yeah,
put a
yeah, yeah.
comment to that tweet that continues the thread. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I just delete the whole joke. I was like, the world may never know. But I tweeted a joke that I said, does a ball gag count as a mask? Asking for a friend. And this person I've been trying to get onto my podcast, who does a specific area of research that I thought was really interesting, sends me a message. He goes, "That joke was really funny, but I would like to be professional, and I'm sorry, and I cannot do your podcast." And I was like, two things went through my mind. One was, at least he said my joke was funny. Two was, did I just hit a level of celebrity where I'm now getting my tweets examined to reflect who I am and maybe get canceled? But then I was looking at it, I was like, you research badger fucking. How in God's name is my tweet worse than your line of work? That might be important, but it just has me so. I was so like, I looked at it and it was, he sent it to me like 5 a.m. and I just looked at it and I was like, I'm not even going to fucking respond. Like, did you listen to an episode? I don't always come off like this crazy high. If you look at my Twitter, that's a lot of my tweets is like, joke, 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 t-shirt design, joke, 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 t-shirt design, joke. It's all that. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's almost in many ways, it's sort of like a naughty dad joke, is what it is, because it's not really offensive in a way because you didn't say who was wearing it or what was wearing it. You know, it's a thing,
What the
and
fuck's wrong? Why would a ball gag be offensive? That what when we could do a word assimilation with association with this thing, but hang on a second. Like when it comes
it's
to everyone that commented gave me the exact same response. And I was like, does everybody's like jokes or minds think alike when it comes to like the same response to a joke? It was like if it covers your nose. And I knew some of the people that were talking about like that was a joke, like if it covers your nose. And then I knew some of the people that were commenting it like, yeah, but it has to cover your nose. That's the point of mask. And I was like, oh, like I didn't
so there.
realize that I lit a stick on
Yeah,
fire and threw it
yeah,
into a burning
exactly.
building.
Yeah, exactly. You're going, okay. I didn't realize the stick that I lit that's on fire is up your ass. Jesus, it's like it's a joke. Like, yeah, or the ones who are, you had a lot of people who are responding and all they're doing is copying the post before them, or it's the internet is such a magic thing where you get, there'll be posts done by people who haven't even actually read what the thing is about, and they're actually responding to comments, but relating them to the post. And you want to say to these people, do you even know what you're commenting on anymore? Or are you just stirring the pot because this is ridiculous kind of thing? So it's, oh, you've faded. You've stopped. Have I?
I like to think of
There you
myself
go.
as like a open-minded person, I'd say. Um, but when it comes to like the factor of like so my Twitter, I follow religious people and I also follow non-religious people. And we're not talking about your average everyday friend of like, oh, I'm just don't really have a religion or I like to believe in God. I follow people that are like, religion is a cult. I'm exposing its truth, all this type of stuff. Like they just hate religion. And then I follow people that are so into it that are priests or pastors. And the whole reason is I want to talk to both sides. I want to see the perspectives from both handles, which I think is important. But the issue with that is if I like a post, interact with something that somebody put up, then any of my followers see that, and that's when they get upset. And that's when they're like, "Well, I don't want to do this because then you're friends with these people." I'm like, it's the same shit. I watched a 45-minute video because my one buddy, who he will not be named, but I think if you've listened to my show, you know who it is, believes in something called the flat earth. And I like his perspective. I understand it. So I watched a debate between scientists and people that believed in flat earth. And you could see points on either side. And, I think it's important not to get into these giant feuds
There's
where
I saw some of the podcast, and no offense to the gentleman, but the entire I'm listening to the conversation, and do you know who Peter Sellers is?
Wait, which podcast?
Well, your friend or whatever, the flat Earth. You've talked about it quite often when
We've
when
mentioned it, but the
yeah.
episode's still unreleased because
Ah,
nobody.
okay, yeah, because you've just talked about it,
He's like,
and
I got 5 people to message me. I'm like, I know for a fact I had 30 people tell me they messaged you, and you said 20. So if you really don't want it to go up, it won't go up. But he's a good guy, so I love him.
but that's it. Well, there you go. But um, Peter Sellers, the guy who did Pink Panther and all that kind of stuff, Inspector Clouseau, he did a lot of stuff for the BBC, like his recordings and stuff, and he has a whole thing on a guy who believes in the flat Earth, and he goes on to a BBC talk show to discuss his theory. And when you were mentioning the flat Earth, I can't help but thinking of this sketch that he does, where he talks about the clouds being hung on the sky with Velcro hooks, and it's just like, okay, that's when they talk about the moon landings and things like that, and we're not. I'm not going to get into the moon landings and all that kind of
Oh,
thing.
we can because I don't think we landed on the moon when we said we landed on the moon.
Did
I've
you ever
said
see?
that a couple times.
Did you ever see Capricorn One, the movie Capricorn One?
No.
You want to see a fantastic movie? It was a movie in the '70s about they fake a landing on Mars, a manned landing on Mars, and what ends up happening in the movie is the I'm not going to spoil anything, but what
It's from
happens
the
is
fucking 70s. What are you
well, no, but
spoiling?
it's no, but I mean it's a great like you haven't heard of it kind of thing. But in the what happens is they send an unmanned rocket to Mars. The actual astronauts are back on Earth and they're filming everything inside. They're inside their cabin or whatever, and the rocket burns up in the atmosphere.
Was there anybody? Oh, it's unmanned. That's right. You said
It's
unmanned.
unmanned,
Okay.
but
I'm listening.
they now have a problem. They've got 3 astronauts sitting in a warehouse pretending they're going to Mars. To the world, they're dead. So
That's when you just create a thing like they were in an escape pod or a capsule that broke off
no,
and they.
see, this is the thing. It's like so they burned up. There's no on live television. They burn up because there's a inside, and so everyone on the planet, but the government knows they're not dead. So it becomes a totally different type of movie at that point, where these 3 astronauts find out that they're dead. So they now have to get away. And it's a really, really cool movie, except OJ Simpson's in it. So
What's wrong with OJ?
so it might be able to spoil things.
How would that
Well, he
ruin a movie? I'm not mad at
uh,
Mel Gibson's movies.
yeah, that's true. I mean, because OJ was in a lot of he was in Naked Gun and he was really funny in Naked Gun
He
actually.
was
So
handsome.
that's but it's yeah, if you want to see again, we're getting into the storytelling stuff and I think you're a storyteller. I think you know I think we define ourselves. I think my one of the things I was coming up with was my definition of myself changes every day because it's there's new stuff happening all the time. It's how I deal with certain situations or how I react to each new day changes my how I define myself, kind of thing. So it's I think I'd much rather be a unstatic definition kind of thing, just kind of floaty in there than somebody to going, well, no, you're a this. That's what you are. And I go, well, I'm a bit more than that. No, no, no. You're a basketball player or you're a this. Because it's I find it really interesting where say there's a sports personality. One of the guys, for example, big on this, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
He's a painter. He's a painter. He's painted. He's done lots
That's
of
not
stuff.
what I think of when I think of Sylvester Stallone. What
Exactly.
do you
You
think I
don't.
think of? Because I bet you it's not what you would think.
What do I think of when you think of Sylvester Stallone? I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, Mama, get off the train.
What the fuck was that?
You ever see that?
No.
That had Estelle Getty in it
I'm
from.
23, man.
You need to watch some old movies, young man.
I like the Big Lebowski. I joined their religion. That's about it.
That's the thing. No,
That's my theory on death is the Big Lebowski I got it from. Like, you ever feel like everything goes 100% right or everything goes 100% wrong the day that you're going to die? Like, sometimes I hit every green light in my town, and my town's got like hundreds and hundreds of green lights.
so
Every street has a stoplight. So
so in the back of in your lizard brain, you're actually going, oh, maybe I'm going to die today. Does that go through your head?
did you just assume my brain's animalistic tendencies?
No, I would never assume anything. I could call it an otter brain. It's just
I
lizard brain
just
is
feel
easier to
like
say.
you either get a really good stroke of luck or you get a really bad one. And like, I remember hitting every green light, and I think it had to be over 100 green lights I just went through. And I was like, this has never happened. I always hit a red, because they're all in the same time thing. So that means for like 20 minutes straight, I was just going straight through greens. And I was like, I need to go home and lie down and not leave my house because I might die today. Like, it's just this fact of like, in the Big Lebowski, Donnie, for instance, he dies in the movie. He was literally rolling strikes, getting everything like, way to go, Donnie! Like, the whole, like,
Yeah.
he was doing great. And then towards the ending, before his heart attack, he goes and bowls, and the ball goes right in the gutter, and you could see him be like, this is weird. This has never happened to me before. And he's like contemplating his like throw, and he's holding his arm, signs of like when someone would have a
Yeah.
stroke or someone would have a heart attack, and then he has a heart attack later. And I'm like, maybe like before there's always a sign of like maybe you're off or maybe you're 100% on point. Like, there's people that have won the lottery or have had this really good stroke of luck, and then they die like a short few hours later.
There's a Hans Christian Andersen story about that. The thing about it's funny, when you're talking about stories and the way that we Disneyfy everything kind of thing, other stories like the Little Mermaid, that's a horrible story, an
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
horrible
dark.
story. It's very dark, and there's a story by Hans Christian Andersen. Like the whole point of a lot of his stories, pardon me, is you die and go to heaven, because that was the ultimate gift that you could get during his time frame. And we, like, when we read it nowadays, we don't get that. We don't get like, well, you go, well, he died, what's the happy part of that story? No, he went to heaven. That's the happy part.
Yeah, but
No, no.
what's your idea definition of heaven changes
Well, no,
though?
see, this is during his time frame. Like, it's why do people, like, when you talk to people and you talk about heaven, why do people always point up, and why is hell always down? Why can't hell be over there? Like, like, and why can't heaven be
Hell's at a Denny's at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Denny's at 4 o'clock in the morning is awesome, man. That is Mount Olympus.
The food's not the issue. The people that go at 4 o'clock in the
Oh
morning are
yeah.
the
Okay,
issue.
that's different. That's totally different. That's like being, yeah. Okay, I
Saw a
could see
person
that.
stand up on a table and pull out a gun. It's like, holy shit.
That's like, yeah, it's kind of like Hell's Waiting Room.
I'm just
Being
like, holy shit, you forgot my syrup. Like, how the fuck am I going to eat waffles with? It's just like,
that's but see, that's the thing. I mean, so you got his story, but the story that he tells is about this actor, he's this young actor who has the performance of his life. He's like 23, I think, or something like that. And he gets on stage and he does the performance of his life. He has a standing ovation, and he has a heart attack and dies right there on the stage. And the whole, when you're reading the story, you go, oh my God, that's horrible. But the whole idea of the story and the whole, there's a like a postscript to the story that he writes. And it was like, what a wonderful story. This is amazing. He died at the penultimate moment of his life and he went to heaven. And it's like, no, 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 no. Today we don't get that, but back then that was the thing to do, kind of thing. So I suppose, yeah, there's that Big Lebowski sort of, yeah, everything's going right. Because I can't imagine what it would be like if everything was going wrong, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, does this mean what does this mean? Does this mean? Because
I
you do
don't,
have days like that as well.
I see. I like to correlate it with the fact, like, if everything goes wrong, maybe you're just like, it's a sense around you, like death is around you. Like, usually when death's around in the room, nothing really ever goes right, or it might go right 100%. I don't know. See, that's the funny thing about death. But it's like, if there is a heaven,
You know why
what
that is?
what
Death is clumsy. Death is clumsy. He's just sitting in the corner, and he
you
can't
better
go to his
cross
side.
yourself, dude. Death will kill you right
No,
now.
no, he's sitting in the corner. He's dropped his side. He's like, sorry, and something falls over, and he's like, "Jeez," he goes, oh, or he trips on his cape. He's got this cowl thing happening. And he's wearing a mask. He's got so much stuff he's got to deal with. I'm surprised that he gets the job done.
I did the dumbest thing when I was a kid, and it was I read those graphic universe books about like religion, about like a bunch of stuff. It got me interested in Greek mythology, but it really was a very formative time in a kid's life, I would say, like an age where you're still kind of questioning a lot and you really want to know what answers are. Because when you're a kid, you can tell a kid anything and they'll run with it 100%, usually without checking into it. So I was reading a lot of books about religion from Greek mythology, Zeus, and all these things. And then I remember reading a book where it was Gaia talking about how Gaia created people, and then all this other, it just went down this rabbit hole. And I mean, for a good week after I read that book, I was being very, very nice to the earth, thinking that at any moment it could suck me up into a fucking.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that that's it. Oops, I'm sinking. I'm sinking.
So if it hits a point, maybe if you question things like, if everything goes wrong, is it the universe just has a grudge against you? Like maybe something is going, like this is the interesting part, because then people go, well, no, because it's this and this and this. And it's like you can't say no because nobody knows. Here's the thing. If there is a heaven, and I'm not saying there isn't, I'm just saying, what idea of heaven are we talking about? Because the idea of heaven where your friends and family are there, but then what comes into reincarnation? Because we can't just be, if we are the only thing of
Yeah,
ourself and there was no other before us. But then they always talk about there's reincarnation in heaven, for instance. The way I was told was that if you did, if you spent enough time up there, you could choose to be sent back down to the earth, but you would have no memory of your family. You would be a whole different person. You wouldn't have any memory of your past life. Well, then how bad do you hate your fucking family that you're willing to be reincarnated to go another round on earth and forget every single memory and every single moment you had with your family? These were questions I had as a kid. I was like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I was like,
have you have you heard the joke? Pope comes out, talk to the cardinals, and he goes, guys, I've had a dream.
guys, we got to stop. It's getting too
No,
much
he,
with
he
the
goes
kids.
he goes, I've had a dream. God wants to talk to me, so I got to go into the room. So throw the smoke up, because I'm going to be in there for a couple of days. And they're like, okay, okay, So the Pope goes in his room. They throw up the smoke, and the cardinals are like, oh, I wonder what God's got to say. This is crazy. Pope comes out. He's white as a sheet. Guys, I just spoken to God, and you're not going to be happy. First of all, uh, God is Jehovah Witness, and she's pissed. And so, as a Catholic, that's a really funny joke. I can tell by your face, you're not Catholic.
No, it just had me thinking. I had a dream the other night that was so freaking like, so when I sleep probably 10, 20 minutes. Like I sleep in breaks kind of. So like I'll sleep 20 minutes and then I'll be up for like an hour, then I'll sleep 20 minutes and I'll be up for like a couple hours, and I just can't stay through a solid sleep. But my definition of sleep is different from other people's definitions of sleep. My sleep lasts like years. Like when I sleep for 20 minutes, it feels like I've been asleep for ages. I'll have a full 8-hour movie that plays in my head. Like it's just it's so weird. The fabric of time just doesn't affect sleeping for me or something like that. But
Time is different for
so
dreaming.
my dream was I was driving in a car. I wasn't driving, I was in the passenger seat. And I was just looking out the window for mainly the main portion of the dream. And I was like, I just kept asking questions and kept getting an answer, but I never turned my head to see who was answering my questions. And by the time I answered my, like, I started, like, what is life? Life, it's kind of this thing that goes round and round, and it's kind of like a carousel. One day it's going to be your time to step off. And it's like, okay, it's like, that's a fucking hitting hard with them questions. And then, I turned over and I just go like, holy shit. And it's Jesus Christ. I swear to you, I can't make this up. It's Jesus Christ. And I'm like, oh my God, you're Jesus Christ. He goes, yeah. Um, where do you want to eat? And I was like, where do I want to eat? He goes, there's a Taco Bell like right up here. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
taco. I was like, shit.
because I can imagine Jesus going, "I'm sick of loaves and fishes."
Yeah. I was like, I guess we're breaking bread, I guess. Is that how the term comes? But I was like, so we pulled into Taco Bell. We walked in, we ordered. He sat down and he was like, my food's already coming. I was like, but you didn't even say anything to the person at the counter. And he goes, it'll come. I was like, okay. He's like, when you wait, things will come. And I'm like, okay. Um, so I had to examine this because I like to examine like
Yeah,
I
there's lessons in there, fella.
yeah, well, that's what I was looking at. I was like, where did I hear that like good things come to those who wait? So that's probably being infused into my mind, which is creating this scenario. Because I like to study one aeronautics, which is like the study of sleep, people that can like interpret dreams and be able to go into someone else's dreams. It's an old scientific study that came out way back in the day. Same thing with psychonauts, is taking drugs and trying to find like a higher purpose or trying to find oneself. They're
Have
called
you ever
psychonauts.
read any of the dream analysis books from the turn of the century?
No.
I've got 3 or 4 of them. Like I was really big into dream,
All right. Let me
uh,
get back to my dream real quick.
but you do your thing, yeah.
But I remember I sat down and then a tray comes up and it's what I always used to get as a kid. Taco 12 pack, but it was just soft shell tacos with a couple hard ones in there. Just plain tacos. I like to keep it simple. And then he gets his and it's a burrito and he unwraps it, bites into it. And I'm like, what'd you get? He's like, I got a bean burrito. And I was like, no meat? He's like, no. I was like, you need the protein, man. And then he's like, it works either way. And I was like, what? And then I look and there's avocado on it. And I'm like, yo, you're a psychopath. I just said you're a psychopath. And then he just looks at me, goes, what? Because I'm eating avocado. I was like, Jesus Christ. And he goes, yes. And then the dream ended. And I was like, what? What the fuck? Like, I woke up like, fuck it, like I was an idiot. I was like, what just happened to me? Like, I felt like someone like picked me up, shook me, and then put me back down. And I was like, all right, I don't understood what any of that meant. So I had to examine it thoroughly. I was like, what did the
So, were you researching like bean burritos and avocado and stuff like
I think
that?
I fell asleep. I think in the background on my TV because I leave my TV on at night, so like yeah, I'll listen to Hulu or something,
Yeah.
and or a podcast. And I think there was probably an advertisement for fucking Taco Bell in there, and that just got inserted into my head when I was sleeping.
Well, it's funny the way that you go into the Taco Bell and he's like, no, no, you wait, it'll come, and I'm thinking, ooh, and he's pulled out the Kevin Costner film on me. And what was the name of the film? Field of Dreams.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come. But I got distracted for like, I mean, there's a good chunk of that dream. Like it goes even deeper. Like when I was ordering, they have the thing that sits on the counter where you like drop a quarter in and you spin it and try and hit the bottom. And if you land on one of the platforms, you get like a free taco. I was
Yeah.
doing that for like a good 15 minutes. Like he was just probably waiting to give me some advice. And he's like, this kid's wasting all my valuable time fucking playing with a Taco Bell thing. And I was like, if life gets more complicated than that, I don't know if that's a life you want to be living. Cause to be like just encapsulated by the smallest things in life is probably the most important, which I think is probably another
I
message of
think,
that
yeah,
dream.
I think that's a really funny thing. I mean, I think this, what I believe different than other people is, I think anyway, is I I went through the longest time thinking the universe was punishing me for lots like, or the universe would be like, say you've done something or you didn't get something that you were hoping for or something, and I grew up sort of in an environment where you were treated like, well, you obviously didn't deserve it, or it wasn't your thing, or you didn't do the right thing, so you didn't get that thing. And I had to, as an adult, I'm sitting back going, does the universe really work that way? Like, does the universe punish people and reward people, and or is stuff just there and I've just chosen not to take it at that time, kind of thing? I just didn't see it. I didn't see this stuff, like, and so is it, I think my view of the universe is changing, and as I get a bit older, kind of thing, especially after I've had my heart attack, I've stuff's really changed in that way. But I cannot think, I wouldn't, I don't want to live in sort of an environment where I feel like I'm being punished and rewarded for stuff that I might or might not do, kind of thing, or the way I act, or um
I had
you
that
know
happen this past year. I had seven friends pass away, and then someone close to me passed away. And I was like, looked up at the sky. I was like, did I fuck you, Jesus? Like, why are you just like, feel like someone was taking a magnifying glass and aiming the sun down on top of my head? I was like, why am I being exposed to so much right now? This is a lot in a short amount of time. But, I talked to a buddy of mine that was going through literally like almost the exact same scenarios as I was. And he had a little bit more on his plate than I did in terms of like, he's in Texas when they had that freeze. So it was like he had to pull a dryer into his room just to be able to have some heat for his house. You start to really find the scope of things. And at this point, it's like we both said, it's like at that point, you just got to be like, I can't get mad anymore. I have no more in me to get pissed off. And then once you kind of let that in, like say I'm done being upset, I'm done being sad, I'm done being mad, and just start letting people start laughing at the shit that comes your way. Now it just changes your perspective where you start looking at like maybe it's not maybe it's our idea or our perspective that the universe we did something and pissed off the universe, but I think it's this perspective of like if you just stop giving like a shit and examining it and being so upset by it, you change your perspective and it just
Yeah.
becomes better.
And,
It less
we've
affects
had
you.
these conversations before. I mean, where we talked about perspective and point of view and all that kind of stuff. And I think we, like my parents, were very much a, well, you didn't deserve it then. That's why you didn't get it, or you didn't get this thing, or that didn't happen because obviously you didn't work hard enough, or that kind of thing. So sometimes you look around and you go, as you said, you go to the universe, why are you shitting on me? And then you realize actually it's not me. The universe has done nothing to me. The universe or whatever, I've had friends pass away, but nothing's happened to me. uh but I feel like I'm getting all this stuff, like, um I had, I was it's kind of a harsh lesson to learn, where you kind of go, why are you doing this to me, universe? And you go, actually, it's not doing anything to you. And that was the hardest lesson I had to learn for myself. I had to go, I'm putting a lot of pressure on stuff. And you're right, you just have to sit back and go, okay, I can't, if I don't take this as seriously as that, it becomes a different thing. Then it becomes, I started to ask myself, what am I learning from this? Is there a lesson in this? Rather than, why are you hitting me with this emotional hammer? I had to start going, okay, first I had to convert that hammer into a book. I had to go, okay, what's in the book that you're hitting me with that I need to learn something, And it helped me to kind of get a grip on a lot of stuff that was going on for me. But um, that's a bugger. That's a lot of people to pass away, kind of thing. And it's, you do what you can, kind of thing, to get through that. But yeah, everyone is different. For me, I just had to look at it and go, actually, nothing has happened to me. Why do it's the phrase. You ever talk to somebody? It's like, you know what? You're making me feel guilty. Stop doing that. You're making me feel guilty. And I used to go to them, actually, I'm not making you do anything. If you choose to feel guilty, why?
That's just
What's
the new form of gaslighting. Gaslighting is
exactly?
like there are people that do that. That's a real thing. I'm like, holy
Well,
shit.
no, you do. Like, it's particularly in abusive relationships, where you will have the manipulator will be like, you're making me feel guilty, stop doing that, you're making me feel guilty. And the other person's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. And it's down to, no, I'm not making you do anything. If you're choosing to feel guilty, ask yourself why you're feeling guilty. Or, it's like, it's like, oh, you're making me mad. It's like, no, I'm not making you mad. You're choosing to be mad. That's on you, kind of thing. And I just had to, there's so many ways I had to change my way of thinking. It's really, it's a bugger, because it's almost like I'm trying to rewire 40 years of crap, kind of thing, that we all come through. And you're a young fella, but you've got your own stuff going on. Like, you've got, you, as you said, you, when you dream in chunks, kind of thing. So I wonder if the universe has whacked away in there stuff. So it can be tough. Like, you think you're in a rut, and you go, how do I get out of this rut? Why am I in this rut, kind of thing? But because the thing about a rut is, you don't know you're in it, because there's walls go up so high and you're just going straight, and you think this is the only path. And then you don't realize just straight up there is actually, you can see all this other stuff you got to get into. And I just was in this, so many ruts I had to get out of. So it was
If you
just,
want my honest perspective coming from, and you can say, yeah, I'm coming from a 20-year-old, probably going to go in one ear and out the other. But at the same time, if you look at the aspect of like what everyone is being exposed to, there's a reason why it's a slow trickle rather than a giant blast. Because when it's a giant blast and it's too much at one time, there's a very high possibility it's going to hurt your mind. For instance, some of the greatest moments of my life were before I started this podcast, were doing jet skis. I was so simple-minded in the aspect of I didn't know a lot about politics. I didn't know a lot about the world. I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities. I hadn't talked to a lot of people. I don't understand a lot of perspectives. I thought my opinion is my own. And I didn't have a care because I didn't know what else was going on around me. The only thing I was infatuated with was what was going on in my life. Was I going to drink another Red Bull or something and eat this bag of Skittles? I was killing 6 30 or 20-ounce Red Bulls on my way to work in the morning and eating a bag of Skittles, like just for breakfast. Like,
I'm
I mean,
surprised you. I'm surprised you stay on the planet. You should just went ting,
like I
shot
don't
off into
even
the horizon.
energy. I have ADHD, so energy drinks just do nothing for me. So I just drink them for the taste. And people are like, well, that's weird. And I'm like, well, it's true. I mean, I think the only time I've ever consumed enough caffeine in one drink to be able to actually maybe feel something was when I worked like 2 days, like 14 hours straight. And then I just did 3,200 of milligrams of caffeine in one drink with like a pre workout scoop in that. I felt a little bit, but I wasn't like cracked out of my gourd like most people would be like 100 milligrams caffeine, their hands start shaking. Like I drink a pot of coffee before I go to bed. Like, I mean, that helps me get sleep, to be honest with you. But when you look at like your scope of view, once it expands, you get exposed to a lot more things. And when you get exposed to a lot more things, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually pretty good, but you have to be careful at the way that trickles down into your head. Like, for me, I was getting exposed to a lot of things when I first started researching about the government, when I was researching about all this. And this is where you head down the conspiracy rabbit hole, where you talk to someone who starts learning these things. And the issue is you don't stop at the first page. It's like reading a really good book. You start going second page, third page. And the next thing you know is you're 4 chapters in. You're like, oh my God, that's a lot for my head. I'm tired. Same thing with information. You're supposed to take it at a slow pace. This is why classes break up certain curriculums and things, because a lot is very, very draining on you as a person. And when you're exposed to too much, which is where we see these go-getters, these people that might be super, super depressed, like that guy hurt him, that guy killed himself. Yeah, that guy killed himself. Because look at the aspect of what he was dealing with. People that are celebrities, for instance, famous child stars that go crazy, and people are like, oh my God, child stars never turn out well. Think of having everything shoved in your face at such a young age. It should be a slow trickle. Like when you're mining and you hit a you hit your hammer on whatever to get the ore out, and a little bit of water comes out. You go, oh my God, I'm in a hole and there's water filling up into the hole, but it's a small trickle. So I have time to be able to think thoroughly and get out of here. Instead, you're the fucking person that decides to go, might as well hit it again, and then fucking hit it again. And then it makes it even more. And it's a fucking waterfall coming in on you. You got
I've
to
got.
be careful because your
Yeah,
resilience time, this is the important part of this, the resilience time on that. I was getting I came to me like a month ago. I finally got out of all these impacts that were happening to me. I was like, what's the fucking point of life? And you become very pessimistic about shit. You don't feel like life is worth really living. And this is where we tell people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's because your resilience time, it's happening, it's slowly coming back to you, but you've been exposed to so much, it's going to take a little while longer for you to find that light at the end of the tunnel. But a lot of people nowadays with the high suicide rates are not understanding that capacity that it's going to come. They think that this is going to be like this forever, and I'm at fault for understanding that at sometimes myself too, where I'm like, damn, if this is what life is, it fucking sucks. But there is that come up. It's just you've been exposed to so much. It's like busting through a wall of pain. There's another wall, but it's going to be even farther down the line because now you're more resilient. You've been through this pain already. You can handle more pain now. It's you're constantly building yourself up into a better person. And it's very, very hard to see that in the moment, but it is there.
totally agree, man. I got a metaphor that I have to use with myself. Is that somebody told me once that they said even a flood, whether a flood is a good thing and it's washing away all the crap, or it's a bad thing and it's wiping out a small seaside town. A flood is a flood, and when it's done, there's wreckage, there's damage, and even they even went so far as to say that light, we need light to see, we need light to learn. There's a reason why they say let's shine a light on that so you can get a better picture of it. But if the light is too bright, it blinds you. And if you stare into that light too long, you don't see anything anymore. And you so even though it's light and somebody goes, yeah, well, I'm shining a light on it, it's like, no, the light you're using is too bright, and that's going to affect you. You won't be able to see the end of the tunnel because you're blinded, and you have to wait for your eyes to come back, to adjust, and then you got to go, okay, let's do this again. Because even if, as you were saying, the conspiracy theories and stuff like this, all this new information is coming at you, and yeah, you're young, and this, like COVID, is a thing that's like this, like the lockdown and stuff. This is crazy. It's crazy. Like, but we didn't live through the wars, or we didn't live through like the Vietnam drafts, or we didn't live through, like, there was all these things that have happened um, at different times. Look at the
The
Depression.
ability to adapt is
Yeah,
what people have, but the progress of it gets slowed when you choose to push it away and not focus on
yeah,
what that thing is. It's very, very interesting because with every conspiracy theory thing I found an interesting article that goes along with it. Not just like conspiracy theories, but like real truth stuff, MK Ultra
yeah,
type things. But we're in a learning process. We're in a learning curve. And here's the issue is when this information seemed like it was blocked for so long, and then now all of it's coming out with the exposure of social media, which is, I think, probably the most important thing about social media is making you aware of things. It's why I get so upset about censorship, because there are some things I believe that shouldn't be censored just because you might favor this political person. You might, you don't want that information getting out there when it's true stuff that the people should know. There's a back in the day when you used to, so this could be a really crappy example, but back in the day when you used to be able to donate sperm, like to a sperm bank,
yep.
they didn't realize this to be a factor, but you're not supposed to donate sperm in a state and then go to the next state over, because you can only donate a certain number of times per day or per year or something.
Yeah.
So they would ban you from going at least 3 states over. You have to go at least 4 states over to be able to donate sperm again at a different place. And you know why that is?
Probably because there's a better chance of running into a familial DNA.
And then, yeah, inbreeding. That was the biggest fear. Well, there was
Yeah.
also another one, an interesting one I read, where it was a guy. I think his friend died, and he had problems with producing testosterone, so he ended up getting his friend's nuts. This is real. You can look this up. He got his friend's nuts onto his body, and they actually deemed it ethically or human ethically immoral. And the reason why they did that was because, see, when you get someone else's nuts, even though it's your body that has it now, it's still that person's kids. So he was producing his friend's kids. Like, that's, to me, that just fucking blew my mind out of the water. I'm like, oh my
The
God, like it's really like the little details that you don't even think of.
the ex-wife and I went through what they call IVF, in vitro fertilization,
Mhm.
when we were married, because we were trying to have kids, and we went through a lot of that type of stuff, kind of thing. We went through, this is during the 90s, and that was during a time when we had people coming up to us saying, you're going to hell. We're like, and why is that? And they said, because you're going against God's will. God has deemed that you do not deserve children. So you trying to have children means you're going to hell. And we had people saying that to us all the time. All the time. And you're like, wow, like, wow, where like, like what type of religion is that, kind of thing? How is this, and then we had people who were like, oh, you should just go on holiday, you'll get pregnant. There's all this, the stuff that happens, and then they don't realize, there's medical conditions and this and that and the other thing. It's like, oh my God, kind of thing. But it's one of those things that that's a topic for another day, kind of thing. Yeah,
Did you
this
hear
do
Bo
they
Burnham's song about God?
no,
He was
no,
like,
I'll look.
"Dear God, dear Lord, dear vague muscular man with a beard or a sword." And he would just like, he was like, he used the word that you can't use word now that means cigarette in England. He was like
Yes.
the great all loving, and then that word, hater. He goes the man with all the questions, the biggest debater, something about masturbation too. He just
Yeah.
it hit so much to a T where it was like he's literally pointing out all the fucking weird shit that like these rules or these guidelines or these things that are in the story. It's like if God is there's this mystical being on a cloud that controls heaven,
Do
wouldn't
you?
he want your happiness?
Yeah. Do you remember that song that came out about what if God was one of us? Just a
What if
slob,
God was one of
just a
us?
stranger on a bus, or a slob like one of us, just a stranger on a bus.
Yeah.
That girl got so many death threats because she called God a slob.
There's a
And
reggae song that says, I think God smokes weed and he was high when he made me.
these are all what ifs kind of thing. It's like the movie Last Temptation of Christ when that came out in the 80s. Again, you may have to look this up. But there were people boycotting that movie. And one of the guys, big guy, Jerry Falwell, who uh, they interviewed him and they said, so why are you boycotting this movie? Have you seen it? And he goes, I don't need to see it to know it's the devil's work. Yeah, you do. Like you do need to see it to make an opinion of it. Like you can't yeah, that's that just a phrase like that said everything about the whole um uh
You know what gets me like kind of freaking out is the fact that everyone will complain about that, but no one will complain about the memes of like a car going into a ditch or going off like a bridge, and then the song playing "Jesus Take the Wheel." So I'm like, what is it okay to make fun of Christ, but it's not it's not okay to make fun of God?
well, that's the thing. Well, because I guess they look at it this way because in the Bible, Jesus doesn't really come across as somebody who's going to, take you to school kind of thing, whereas God, he's got lightning and puts people in lions'
That's a
dens
thing though. Is like
and
back in the day
causes plagues.
when I was watching that flat earther versus scientist debate about if the earth's flat or if the earth's round, the guy was like, back in the day, science is classifying things. That's the whole point of science. And people go, yeah, but everything you have is a theory. And he goes, do you know what the actual Casper, do you know what the actual definition of scientific theory is? Like, do you know what that means?
The actual definition, I'd have to look it up.
When I say the word theory, what do you think of? It's like a plausible thing, but it's a
Yeah,
scenario. It's not really
a
fact, right?
theory is a theory is a concept or an idea.
Okay,
Uh,
that's not what scientific theory is. So the word theory thinks people think, oh, it's an idea. It's not really fact. Scientific theory is with all the facts that they have, they're chalking it up to this. It means that it is true, but there's room for improvement.
yeah,
That is the
there's
whole
room for
point.
interpretation. Yeah,
Yeah, that is the
okay.
whole point of scientific theory. So when they use that words, flat earthers bring it up and go, well, that's what it's a theory. It's a theory. It's not fact. It's not fact. So it's not real. And then they were arguing this and he goes, the same reason why back in the day you thought when thunder struck, that was God. And now we understand that that's a weather pattern and you don't refute that. So why do you think that your idea of this is not going to change? And it was a very, very strong point. And like I said, I understand both sides of the argument here. I mean, you can argue things where it's like, yeah, you're really makes sense the earth's flat. And then there's some things you're like, yeah, but there is this and this and this and this and this. But it boils down to this great debate. And I look at it like I've talked to so many people who say that they're religious, and I say, oh, yeah, so you go to church? And they're like, no, I choose to worship in my own way, like at home, in my own interpretation of what God is. And I'm like, that should be the main goal. The
Well,
main
in many
goal is God would want you, or this mystical being would want you to understand it the way you need to understand it to have
in ma-
faith.
yeah, in many ways though, I wish those people would change their definition because they're not actually religious. Then they're spiritual. If you're religious, you follow religion. But if you're at home, if you're worshiping at home, you're spiritual. Un- Unless you are, following a religion or a pattern of religion, then you go, well, then why aren't you doing it at church? You could do that in church, kind of thing. So
Oh God,
I've
it's so
broken him.
it's too fucking much. People want to be like all these unique labels and shit. Like the news does it the
Ah!
worst.
And here we are cycling back to the beginning,
I know.
talking
That's how
about
the show
Neo.
works. Good job. Thank you for understanding. Um, but I was talking to a broadcaster and he was telling me, he was like, yeah, the issue with news is the fact of like it classifies things too much and that can distort the perception of the world. And I was like, hey, I can see that. When they say a young black man was shot, they use those words and they highlight those words in bold lettering that inserts into your brain that there's this correlation between this happening more than the other. And I'm like, why don't you just say a young person was shot? Why do you have to identify male or gender? A human being just lost their life. That's the main importance of this situation, not the
Exactly. I
color of
mean,
their.
I
But it's classifying things. Like I said, it's good and bad that we do that. It's very, very good when you're trying to classify things in science, such as there's this
yeah,
species of animal that's different from this species of animal, like a hummingbird. Their beaks over some variant of them, their beaks decided to curve in so they can actually suck nectar out of a flower easier than having the straight one. They adapted. People are known to adapt, but I don't think we're adapting in the correct ways. Instead, we're tearing down rather than adapting to the world we live in today. It's the same thing like my mind back in the day. It adapted to everything I was soaking up to now where it understands a little bit more and it has less of a capacity to be upset about things that I do learn or things that do happen. It's about building up a tolerance, kind of like a drug. It's very, very interesting to see how the world and how people are evolving in such like a crazy way. Like back in the day, I was watching this video and it was about a lot of people that like were suffering from an addiction, and they like see my thoughts on addiction have changed from I went to school for chemical dependency, and I'm like I don't know about addiction because I think you can do the drug probably like meth. You could probably do that correctly, but what is causing you to use it so much to the point that you do overdose on it? It's because there's a problem in your life that you're not confronting. I listened to Demi Lovato talk about like she overdosed from heroin and crack, and she was just so upset with her life that she was turning to drugs to make the pain go away. And I was like, every time you're going to use more and more drugs because you want that pain to go away, it's going to take more and more after you build up a tolerance to make the pain go away. So I mean, listening to a podcast with Carl Hunt, I think his name is, he is a like research psychologist, also use drug administration as well too, addictive counseling and all this stuff. And he was talking about how addiction's bullshit, and he did his TED talk on crystal meth. Like, I'm not talking about he did a TED talk about crystal meth. I'm talking about he did a TED talk while he was on crystal meth. And he was like, you can do drugs properly. He's like, but the way people do them is to get out of pain. And it's the same thing when we offer you a pill. If I tell you take 2 of these to make your back feel better, you wake up in the morning, well, 3 will probably make me feel fucking great. Rob Lowe even talks about that. And he's the most fucking level headed person I've ever seen in my entire life. That man's a
yeah,
fucking gorgeous human being. But when it
they don't
comes,
they don't educate us about that, do they? I mean, it's where like you can substitute almost anything for the drug. You could substitute food. Alcohol is a bad one, but I
yeah,
mean, you could substitute sex. You could substitute like where people
fitness,
are.
the reason why I told you
Yeah,
7:30 was because I was late going to the gym.
but I mean, even if you're like, there are people who over exercise and where they're actually doing damage.
I've trained every day for
Yeah,
fucking 9 years, and I could tell you when I get out of bed, it's like open up one of those containers of the Pillsbury Doughboy where it pops. That's my knees when I get up out of bed. It's like pop.
yeah. That's and I, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the addiction is just one of those things. It'd be interesting. Yeah, I I agree with could you take the drugs? I don't know, kind of thing. Are you doing damage? But I think to a certain extent, he's right. I agree that you could do all these things within moderation. The problem is we're people. We don't do shit in
Yeah, that's
moderation.
the issue
As
is you end
as
up.
you said, as you said, you're gonna go, well, if two make me feel good, three are gonna make me feel great. Because nobody said to you, don't take three. Don't take three because that will be bad. You're just given this bottle of pills, and on the pills it says this is how many you're supposed to take.
I mean, they have
But
medicinal cocaine, so I'm looking at it like there's obviously a way to do it properly. You got to know where that
cocaine
line's to be
cocaine's been
drawn.
around for a long, long, long time. I mean, look at Coca-Cola. What do you think was in Coca-Cola, and why is it called Coca-Cola? It
Somebody
originated.
tweeted at Coke like put the original Coke actually back
Damn
in the can.
straight, because originally Coca-Cola was supposed to be used in the hospitals. It was a way to take medicine. It was the Coca-Cola. The original formula was a lot like where you have like sarsaparilla. It wasn't as carbonated.
Nice smooth sarsaparilla.
Yeah, wasn't as carbonated, and it was the same thing like when gin and tonics. When you talk about um, the reason why the Brits were taking tonic is
Did
because
that get picked up?
yes, it did,
All
which
right,
is
cool.
awesome. Which is supposed to, it was supposed to counteract malaria.
Diet
What
Dr. Thunder, motherfucker. That's all I gotta
what
say.
what
Sorry,
is
go ahead.
No, what's Dr. Thunder?
I guess it's an off-brand I don't ever get main brands because I'm
I was
very,
a I
very
was a I
cheap
was a
as a person.
I was a Dr. Pepper freak kind of thing.
I
You
see.
know,
I'm okay with A&W because they lowered their price to 135 for a 2 liter. But you're
A&W.
telling me
Oh, I miss
12 cans for six fucking dollars? You're fucking nuts, man.
I miss root beer, man. They don't really do root beer over here in the UK. I think so.
Because they got tea.
No tea. I don't do tea either. It's just
I can't do hot tea. That pisses me off. That there's people out there like I'm gonna heat up a little nice thing of tea. Would you like some hot tea? I'm like,
depends.
you're
You see, that depends. I mean, if I go
psycho.
to, you can get some really nice. No, I'm not going here. I'm not doing the tea thing. I'm a coffee drinker. It's with the way it goes.
I drink
But it's
coffee
funny.
too.
Yeah, but going back to what you were saying, like I got there's two things. I mean, when we're talking about evolving, I've one of the things that I found super interesting about moving from North America to the UK was the questions we ask ourselves when we first meet, which tells you what is important to these people. In the United States, if you meet a person, what's one of the first three questions that you end up asking them? What do they do? What do you do? That's one of the first three things you'll ask somebody.
I only do that on this podcast. In real life, I'm like, hey man, nice shirt, and they're like, oh,
But
thanks.
yeah, but a lot of people will just like eventually, it comes out really early. Whereas in the UK, one of the first three questions is, where are you from? Because that's what's important
That's
here.
when they talk.
Well, this is not just where you talk, like, because it's very over here, there's a lot of class structure, like, when you talk about, and certain areas and there are certain dialects and things and certain accents that'll give away, um, or that used to give away possibly your education level or where you're from or what, that type of thing. So there, and
A
because
stereotype that started over a fucking tapeworm. Can you believe that?
exactly, so yes, so you have the stereotype, so you have that, so I find that really interesting. Um, and then I was going to say there's one other thing. When we were talking about the internet and uh, how there's all this, and you were saying you love the way that you can get all the conspiracy things and all the stuff on it. I think the thing for me that I detest most today about like social media. Oh, yeah, that's what you're talking about. All the stuff you can get on is trolling. I just why
Because it's
like,
fun to piss people off.
but it's not fun. I mean,
It's kind of
it's
fun.
yeah, no, it's not fun. This, like, I was watching this podcaster the other day, and she was, or a YouTuber, and she was going through her comments, and she said, "Today is just going to be just me going through my comments day, because I want to tell you how sweet my chat can be sometimes, kind of thing." And so, she's going through her chats, and she's just commenting on some of the things, and then she goes, "Oh, this," she goes, "This is great. I've had no comments like, oh, you look particularly ugly today." And I thought about that, and I go, who takes the time to even type that in, and why would you even type that in? Like, what do you gain from that?
I
As
think
you
it's also people trying to take a shot. Like, if you look at the
At
fact,
what?
well, look
Are
at the
they
fact
jealous that these people are just making money, like, just
that's
because you didn't do it?
part and parcel of where that kind of goes. I like using
But
that
you
word,
but
part and
they
parcel.
have no.
You mentioned words that you don't really know what they mean.
Oh, there's lots.
Do you know what petrichor is?
No.
It's the water that you see on the grass, like dew in the morning. It's called petrichor.
Okay.
Sounds like the middle of an apple is a petrichor, but it's not. It's fucking the dew on the grass in the morning
And
is known as
you just
petrichor.
read that the other day. So it's down to,
I've
like, there are
actually
lots
known
of.
that for years.
Well, see, there's lots of stuff, like, you come across it where you, like, it's sort of like, do you know what dawdle is?
Yeah, like you're dawdling along.
Dawdle is actually the vitreous that's in the bottom of a pipe after you've smoked all the tobacco. What's left in the bottom is called dawdle.
It's called
I was a
resin.
No, I was a pipe smoker, like a tobacco pipe smoker. So it's tobacco.
I saw your
The
typewriter photo.
Yeah, see, well, that pipe that came along, but I mean, when I had my heart attack, I stopped smoking, but I smoked for 25 years, and so there's a lot of pipe terminology I just became familiar with, kind of thing. The
When you had your heart attack, did you
Yes.
have feelings that you were going to have a heart attack? Like I just had a burp. Did you have like any indigestion? Did you have any reflux?
This is what ended up happening with my heart
You
attack, which
smell
was
burnt toast.
no, I thought I was having indigestion. I thought I was having a very bad case of indigestion, and I remember it. I remember feeling it. It lasted for about 20 minutes. Um, and because I thought it was bad indigestion, I didn't think it was a heart attack. And then uh, 5 days later, I went to see the doctor because I was having issues with my knee. I had an accident when I was a lot younger and I buggered up my knee, and there's no cartilage in it and stuff. So I'm
That's why you couldn't play football,
well,
right?
actually, ice hockey,
Ice hockey. That's what it was.
Chicago
Sorry,
Blackhawks.
I was
Um,
close. Seven hundred and
but
fifty-six conversations, man. Give me a fucking break.
I do. So the so I went to see him because eventually I'm going to have this thing replaced, you know, kind of thing. It's and he he's looking at my leg and he goes, "Your ankles are a bit swollen." And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, they get like that." And he goes, "Did you have a pain in your chest last week?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I had really bad indigestion on Friday." And he goes, I'm going to write you a little letter and I'd like you to take this to the hospital, the A&E and hospital." And I went, "Okay." He goes, "Just show this to the nurse when you get in and when you get there." And I went, "All right." So I go in. I think I'm going to have my knee looked at. I hand them the letter. I didn't even read it. I just handed them the letter. I said, "There you go. This I was supposed to give you this." Panic. There's immediate panics ensuing. They're rushing around. They're getting me a wheelchair. They keep, "Are you all right, sir? You know, do you have, are you having pains in your chest?" I'm like, "No, I'm not having pains in my chest. I'm here for my knee." And they're like, "Really?" I go, "Yeah." "Oh, well, we were, never mind." And because in hospitals, no one's going to tell you you had a heart, like, no one's going to tell you what's wrong with you. That's the doctor's job kind of thing, because you can't have a nurse come up and go, "Yeah, I hear you've got cancer," you know, kind of thing. Like they don't, they're not allowed to do that. So they ended up keeping me overnight. They kept me for a day. Still, nobody told me anything. They wanted to keep me for another day. And I go, "You know what? You guys are, I'm checking myself out because no one will tell me what's going on." So when I went back to get my medication that evening, the nurse sat me down and she said, "You do realize they think you've had a heart attack?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm getting that impression, but no one's no one's telling me." And eventually someone showed me the letter the doctor wrote. The letter said, "Please admit this patient immediately. He is suffering from severe chest pains. He has just had a heart attack." That's what this letter said. I was not feeling any of this. This is stuff that had happened to me like a week ago, but since they got through, and it turns out that I had what they call a stress induced heart attack. So my veins were fine, everything was fine, but I got myself into such a situation that I was very lucky. I was really, really lucky because it actually was quite a severe stress induced heart attack. But because I thought it was indigestion, my brain tackled it differently. It wasn't until I was told it was a heart attack where I went, "Oh, okay." And I had to sit down and I had to go, "For fuck, I've had a heart attack." Holy
Yeah.
cow. But I could ignore it for a while when I thought it was just indigestion. And it's when you're actually, when they finally, it took them almost a month for a doctor to finally say, "Yeah, you had a heart attack." Where I kind of went, "Okay, thank you. Now let's deal with this. Let's work on this. And what do I do with it?" But until then, you're sort of in limbo. I was like, "Well, what happened? Did part of my heart stop? Is it broken? Is it, what's going on?" kind of thing. So, or is it something else? Do I have, is there an alien in there that's going to jump out of my chest?
I'm
Like, you don't
having
know.
chest pains.
Exactly. So so you have no idea. So it's just like, okay. And it wasn't until I had something called an angiogram, which is where they stick the camera through your veins, which is a really strange, surreal process these days. Like the stuff that they do, like in 2011, I had my gallbladder removed with what they call keyhole surgery, whereas they just kind of, it's all done with lasers and stuff now, kind of thing, where they don't have to cut you open and pull out the organ anymore. They can just go, "It's all done." And you're like, "Wow, how'd you do that?" So here they are sticking his camera into my veins, and I was like, they the the doctor who's doing it, we're having a conversation, and at one point he went, "Hey, do you want to see?" And I went, "No, no, I do not."
Yeah,
'Cause
why do they ask people that? I don't know one person that's responded to.
well,
I'd love to see it.
I was having this is one of the things that happens when you go like I was having a pain in my stomach, and it was quite sharp, and I was going and because of COVID and all the stuff over here in the UK, I don't know what they're doing in the US, but you do like these phone um
Is this for your gallbladder?
conversation. Well, no, this is just a little while ago kind of thing, and so I'm having this pain, and so I'm talking to the doctor, and the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like your gallbladder." And I go, "Have you looked at my files?" And she went, "What do you mean?" And I went, "I had my gallbladder removed 10 years ago." And she's like, "Oh, oh." And I go, "Oh, what's oh," kind of thing. And she goes, "Oh, well, it could be a couple things." And I said, "What's that?" She goes, "Well, it could be liver failure." I said, "And?" She goes, "Yeah, and the other one, it could be, I'm not even going to tell you what the other thing is. I'm just going to send you for an ultrasound." So immediately she's like, "Yeah, you better go for an ultrasound." So I go in for an ultrasound. I lay down on the table. The guy says, you can relax." I go, "I am relaxed." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Look at your gut." And I said, "Yeah, what about it?" And he goes, "At the risk of sounding racist, you look like a famine victim." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, look at your gut," because I had this sort of bubble. And I go, "Well, I thought this was sort of middle agey thing. I thought that's what happens when you get to my age." And he went, "No, no, you're distended." And I went, "Oh, am I?" And so he goes, "Yeah." And he brings his finger over and he goes, dong, onto my right on my belly button. And it kind of made this odd sound because I was laying on the table. And he goes, "Yeah, just a second." So he brings over the ultrasound. He goes, "I'm going to scan your bowels." I went, "Okay." So he scans them and he goes, "Yeah, that's what I thought." He shows me the screen. He goes, "See, solid black image. What do you think of that?" And I look at that and I go, "What do I think of that?" I go, "Oh my God." I go, "Solid black image across my bowels. What am I supposed to think? I've got, cancer." And he goes, "Yeah, you're full of air." And I went, "What?" And he went, "Yeah, air doesn't transmit over ultrasound, so it comes across as a solid black image. So and I'm thinking, you lead with that, you fucker." So,
Yeah,
so
I have an intestinal issue, and that's what they said. They're like, because I was getting tested, I had to do like the samples, you had to do all that stuff.
yeah,
I have an appointment coming up, and she was like, yeah, she gave me a list of things. She's like, I want to run these through the scanner again, but like I had a protein level in my intestine that was supposed to be,
yeah, you mentioned that, yeah,
oh God, it was supposed to be like, I think the average is 50 or the average is something like that. And my test came back, I was 14.
yeah,
And I was like, That's extremely low, right?" And it's like, yeah, it just means like you have IBS or you have this and this. And they rattled off like four things. And the last one was like a colon disease, like a cancerous disease. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like they have a cross yourself. They got like four different like fucking things that they're
yeah.
giving me.
But
And I'm
you'd be
like,
surprised, or you'll be getting the burrito, and the next time you open up your Bible,
maybe that's the cure is the burrito
there'll be
god.
a bean and avocado burrito.
Yeah, fuck me. I'd rather die. Um, um, but I was like, well, I take medication for IBS. I went to court and won that medication, which there's an episode on this podcast. Um, can't remember what the dude's name is. He had a true crime podcast way back. I think it was a couple, like maybe 100 or so
Yeah,
episodes ago. I talked about it was the day before the court appointment. They didn't show up four times. I got my medication and everything, but it stopped working. It worked like the first like month. So it's
yeah.
like, well, that's for IBS, and that's the only medication that's the highest prescription for it. So it's like, if that doesn't work, then it's the other things. And she was like, yeah, it's like, but it also, we're gonna have to. So I'm like, I got an MRI planned up. I got all this type of stuff planned up because they need to test. Like they're like stress. We're thinking you have a nerve or something that's like locked, or because when you have see when they say neurogenic bowel, that is very scary to them because that means there's one nerve in your body that's out of place compared to the billions that you have. So they're like, that's going to be hard as shit to find rather than if we just found the disease located to this part of your intestine. So
Yeah, and then we're back to labels again because they'd much rather we go, okay, if we could label it as this, we can deal with it. Whereas that other thing
that's when you
is
want the labels. You want the labels
exactly,
when you're trying to medical wise. It's like having a firefighter come up to you and he's putting out your house fire and you go, thank you for being such an amazing firefighter. And he's like, I'm not a firefighter. I'm a fire specialist, analyst, investigator. And you're like, why do you need you? What? Take my
I'd be
fucking
like,
thank you.
I'd be like, go ahead, as long as you got the fire out. It's like, yeah, there's not taxi drivers anymore. They're all that, or what was it? There's not janitors anymore. They're now sanitational engineers or something like that.
Anything to
Garbage
make
men.
somebody feel better at the shit job that they're doing.
Yeah, just well, I see. I'm not saying that labels are a bad thing. I'm saying that we are in a society where we seem to need to label
Because
everything,
it
and
makes you feel better.
some things just don't need to be defined. Some
Yeah.
things there's a mystery that's in. It's funny. You were talking about the stuff that you were reading when you like when I was younger. The first books that I would read, or the first books I remember reading seriously going to the library were ghost stories, like true ghost stories, or not true, but I'm saying paranormal stories. Let's do that. I remember reading about like the haunted houses in England and stuff like that. And then I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and I fell in love with Jules Verne and I was like, "Oh my god." And then a bit later I found this one book that changed the way I look at the world, and it's called um I think it's called The World's Great Religions. I'll have to send a link for it. And it was written by a Catholic priest. And what it is it's not a judgment on any of the religions. What he's done is he's collated the top 25 religions of the world based on population. He says, this is the religion, this is what they believe, this is the name of their holy book, this is how many followers they have. That's all it is. And so through this, I was able to read about like Zoroastrianism and Shintoism and what Judaism, and when you get into the Kabbalists and stuff, and I was because some of that stuff I was like, what is this? What does this actually mean? And then I read The Nature of the Universe by Lucretius, which but it's translated where it was how the Romans looked at the world. Like they had an idea of atomic structure even back then, or he did. He thought that the world was joined together, but he thought that people, you could break them down into small particles that had hooks that would hook together. And I'm thinking, this is a guy in ancient Rome and he's thinking of these concepts kind of thing. And so these are the four books that sort of changed the way I look at the world. The one in the religion I found to be absolutely fascinating because it was just and the other one is when you get into witchcraft and occultism. I was really big on that because I used to get offended by the term occult, uh, because what occult really means, or what I think we talked about this, it simply meant not taught in university. That's what that word means. It's come to mean something else. But at the time, if you were in occult science, we're talking astrology, astronomy. They got into and then tarot went into that. But there was lots of stuff like at that time theater was considered an occult art because it wasn't taught in university. So theater, because it had this sort of occult label, meant it was slightly iffy. And it wasn't until I think what the late 1800s or something where, I mean, even Shakespeare's people, like where you to become an actor and stuff like that, you would still consider not to be a really good profession to be an actor, kind of thing. That was it was almost up there with prostitution, where you did this kind of thing. So it was a bit wonky kind of thing, this stuff. So I think it's sorry, kick my desk. Um, I think that labels are fascinating in a way that, and the way they've changed. And we've talked about this before. The way that words change, where something meant something at one time and now means something totally different to to a new generation of people. I think that's fascinating. I think that's where you can take a word and it means something totally different to a different group of people, and you've it's just evolved kind of thing. So we as people,
We're
are we
in a
evolving?
changing world.
Well, it's nice if we are. I mean, static is no fun kind of thing. It seems like when you get into things like, bring it up again, the COVID stuff, it seems like things are sort of stuck and stalemated. But if anything, what COVID has done is caused other things to change, like social media and influencers have become so much more important. Let's
Yes.
and I'll do it like this, but you feeling jealous of an influencer simply because they came up with the idea first, or like esports or so. I'm not into esports at all.
God
I
bless our Twitch streamers.
but there's some Twitch streamers I watch. Uh, I get. It's funny where you watch some of them and you go, where all they're doing is playing games or doing whatever. There's a couple that I watch. There's one girl I watch. She is hilarious. She's so much fun, but she's got Tourette's. Sweet Anita is her name. Oh, she's fantastic, um, because she doesn't censor her show and she just says it flat out. And she is sort of uh, she's going, "This is what I have. I'm not ashamed anymore. I live my entire life being, told I should be ashamed if I have these things, kind of thing." And so she's fascinating to watch some of the stuff that she does. But there are sometimes when you're watching Twitch stream where you go, "What is this? Why am I even watching this? What is this?" And the things people will do to become partners, and it's like, oh my God. But then you have people who have, you have got some Twitch streamers who have like 25, 35,000 subscribers. And you look at that and go, how does that chat even work? How many moderators do you need to deal with that? You
Just let them
you
all
have
run wild.
you basically have a small town logging in and watching what you're doing, kind of thing, and there's always idiots in there. There's always that one or two people who are typing in boob, cock, titties,
That's how Heaven's Gate started, with a small population, and then everyone drank the Kool-Aid.
Jeez.
Hail Bop Comet.
Oh my
That's someone
gosh.
I need to get on the podcast as a cult survivor. I had Kelly. He led a cult for a short amount of time, but I need someone to come on and
I
talk about the whole cult
Yeah,
stuff.
I knew a couple people who got out of them, but this is back in.
It's a very sensitive subject for a lot of them.
Oh, it can be. And it's particular. There was one woman I knew, when she left her particular cult, they made her life hell, absolute hell. Like um, they took her to court almost every day for, they were trying to bankrupt her
Hmm.
through, just like they take her to court because she parked her car on the street, because she had her grass was green, because her house was the wrong color than everyone else's, and they kept taking her to small claims court, and they had the money to burn. They would just go, if the judge threw it out or do whatever. But this woman had to show up, had to do the stuff, had to be there, to because if she didn't show up, she'd lose the claim and end up having to dig up her lawn or or cut down the trees in her front. And it went on for a couple years. She said it was absolutely horrible. Every day I was getting a new summons for something that I had to show up to court.
So what happens when things are a game? People want to win and someone has to lose.
Yeah. Why though? Right, that's the thing. That's
Because it's all fucking bullshit.
we have that kind of society, don't we?
Yeah.
What are you
Casper,
gonna
we've
do?
been talking for an hour and a half, man. Where can people
Oh
find you
wow.
at?
You can find me at on well, Instagram, and Facebook, or just caspermichaels.com, and I'm there.
I'll make sure I link it in the description. And is there
Rob,
anything?
fantastic chat as always. I'm enamored by the topics that we covered. This is amazing.
Never about voice acting. Never once.
Oh no, never once. But there's too many chats about voice acting, so we can talk about that next time, and we'll talk about how voice acting labels everything.
I'd rather talk about people starting cults in their backyard.
That's right, voice actors
You can't
starting
put a
cults.
sign that says free Kool-Aid and expect me not to be intrigued.